The door swung open with a creak that sliced through the humid Seattle air like a knife through fog, and there he stood. Harlan, all 6'3" of him, broad shoulders filling the frame, his flannel shirt unbuttoned just enough to hint at the salt and pepper chest hair beneath. Maddox froze, towel slipping from his fingers to the bathroom floor, water still dripping from his bare skin onto the cracked linoleum, his heart slamming against his ribs like it wanted to escape the steam-filled room. In that split second, their eyes locked, Harlan's dark gaze widening in shock, Maddox's breath catching in a way that felt like drowning, and neither could look away, the world narrowing to the unintended vulnerability hanging between them. Maddox had always been the careful one, the guy who measured every risk like it was a physics equation he could solve before it unraveled him. At 22, fresh into his junior year at the University of Washington, he navigated life in their cramped off-campus apartment like a ghost in his own skin. Quiet study sessions in the corner of the living room, late-night runs along the Burke-Gilman Trail to shake off the ache of unspoken desires. Seattle suited him that way. All gray skies and relentless rain that mirrored the steady drip of his isolation. He wasn't out, not really. Not to his roommate Riley, the golden boy engineering major with his endless supply of craft IPAs and stories about hookups that made Maddox's stomach twist with envy and relief in equal measure. Riley was straight as the Space Needle's spire, oblivious to the way Maddox's glances lingered a beat too long on the curve of a stranger's jaw in a crowded coffee shop. But Harlan? Harlan was the wild card Maddox never saw coming. Riley's dad had flown in from Portland for the weekend, some vague excuse about checking on his son now that Riley's mom had filed for divorce 6 months back. Maddox had met him once before, briefly, at move-in day last year. A firm handshake, a gruff, "Take care of my boy," delivered with the kind of easy authority that came from years of running a small contracting firm in the Oregon woods. Harlan was 48, built like he could fell a cedar with his bare hands, his face weathered by sun and solitude, laugh lines etched deep around eyes that seemed to hold secrets in their depths. Maddox had dismissed him as just another straight dad archetype, the kind who probably grilled burgers on Sundays and voted conservative without apology. That Friday morning, though, everything shifted. Maddox had slipped into the bathroom for a quick shower before his 9 a.m. psych lecture, the apartment still quiet with Riley snoring off last night's bar crawl. The water had been scalding, just the way he liked it, steam fogging the mirror as he let his mind wander to the faceless guy from the app he'd been messaging, nerves and heat coiling low in his belly. He'd toweled off hastily, wrapping the damp cloth around his waist, when the door flew open without a knock, without warning. Harlan stepped in, coffee mug in one hand, clearly assuming the space empty. His eyes hit Maddox first, the lean lines of his body, water beading on his collarbone, the towel barely clinging, and time stuttered. Maddox's arms jerked up instinctively, but it was too late. The vulnerability was exposed, raw and electric. Harlan's mug tilted, hot liquid splashing onto his boot, but he didn't flinch. Instead, his gaze held, darkening with something Maddox couldn't name. Shock, yes, but laced with a hunger that mirrored the flush creeping up Maddox's neck. "Jesus," Harlan muttered, voice rough like gravel under tires, but he didn't back out. He lingered there in the doorway, the steam curling around his frame like an invitation neither wanted to accept. Maddox's pulse thundered in his ears, his skin prickling under that stare, every inch of him hyper-aware of the space between them shrinking with each ragged breath. It wasn't just embarrassment, it was a spark, forbidden and fierce, igniting in the humid air. "Sorry, thought you were out," Harlan finally said, setting the mug on the sink with deliberate slowness, his eyes flicking down and up again, tracing paths that burned. Maddox swallowed, clutching the towel tighter, but his body betrayed him, a traitorous warmth pooling despite the chill of exposure. "It's fine," Maddox managed, voice barely above a whisper, but the word hung heavy, laced with the lie of how very not fine it felt. Harlan nodded once, sharp, then turned on his heel, pulling the door shut behind him with a click that echoed like a promise or a threat. Maddox leaned against the sink, legs weak, staring at his reflection in the fogged mirror. Who was he kidding? This wasn't some rom-com glitch. This was his roommate's dad, a man twice his age with a life mapped out in straight lines. But as he dressed in jeans and a hoodie, the memory of that gaze clung to him like the damp towel, pulling him under. The rest of the morning blurred, psych lecture on attachment theory that felt like a cruel joke, notes scribbled in a hand that wouldn't steady. By noon, he was back at the apartment, Riley bounding in with takeout from Pike Place, oblivious as ever. Dad's grabbing beers later. Want to join? He's cool, promise. Maddox forced a smile, stomach nodding. Yeah, sure. But as Harlan returned that afternoon, cooler in hand, their eyes met across the kitchen counter, and the air thickened again. Harlan's jaw tightened, a flicker of something raw passing between them before he looked away, handing Riley a bottle with a clap on the shoulder. Dinner was pizza on the coffee table, the three of them sprawled on mismatched couches, rain pattering against the window like impatient fingers. Riley dominated the conversation, stories of failed exams and bar fights, while Maddox picked at his slice, hyper-aware of Harlan's presence at the other end of the couch, his knee inches from Maddox's. Every laugh from Harlan rumbled through the room, vibrating in Maddox's chest, and when their eyes brushed once, twice, Maddox felt seen in a way that terrified him. Later, as Riley crashed early, claiming a hangover, Maddox lingered in the kitchen, rinsing plates under the faucet. Harlan joined him, sleeves rolled up, taking a dish towel without a word. The silence stretched, charged, until Harlan cleared his throat. About this morning. Don't. Maddox cut in, sharper than intended, water splashing over the rim. It was an accident. Harlan paused, drying a plate with slow circles. Accidents happen. Doesn't mean they don't. Stick. Maddox's hand stilled, the words landing like stones in still water. He turned, meeting Harlan's gaze, steady, unflinching, and felt the pull again, magnetic and dangerous. What are you saying? Harlan set the plate down, stepping closer, the scent of his aftershave, cedar and smoke, filling the space. I'm saying I saw you, kid. All of you. And it shook me. The confession hung there, vulnerable in its simplicity, and Maddox's breath hitched. He wanted to bolt, to laugh it off, but his feet rooted to the spot. Harlan's hand lifted, hesitating, then brushed Maddox's arm, light as a question. Electricity arced, and Maddox leaned in, just a fraction, enough to close the gap. Their lips met in a rush of heat and hesitation, Harlan's mouth firm and tasting of beer, Maddox's tentative but starving. It was brief, a collision more than a kiss, but it shattered something inside them both. Harlan pulled back first, eyes stormy. This can't, Riley. I know, Maddox whispered, chest heaving, the weight of it crashing down. But as Harlan retreated to the guest room, door clicking shut, Maddox touched his lips, the shock settling into a quiet ache. What had they done? And why did it feel like the start of everything? The next morning dawned gray and unrelenting, Seattle's fog rolling in off the sound like a shroud over the city. Maddox lay awake in his bed, staring at the water-stained ceiling, the ghost of Harlan's touch replaying in loops that left him restless and raw. Sleep had evaded him, chased away by the what-ifs clawing at his mind. What if Riley had walked in? What if Harlan regretted it? What if this was the spark that burned everything down? He rolled over, burying his face in the pillow, the faint scent of his own shampoo a poor substitute for the cedar smoke that still lingered in his senses. Down the hall, the apartment stirred to life. Riley's laughter boomed from the kitchen, mingled with Harlan's deeper rumble. Easy, familial, the kind of normalcy that now felt like a lie. Maddox dragged himself up, pulling on yesterday's hoodie, and patted out, forcing casualness into his step. Harlan was at the stove, flipping pancakes with a spatula, his back to the room, broad and unyielding. Riley sat at the table, scrolling his phone, oblivious. Morning, sleepyhead. Dad's on breakfast duty, better than my ramen skills, right? Maddox managed a nod, sliding into a chair, his eyes betraying him by flicking to Harlan. Their gazes collided for a heartbeat, Harlan's dark with unspoken warning, before he plated the food, sliding one in front of Maddox with a neutrality that stung. Eat up. Big day ahead. The pancakes were perfect, fluffy, edged with crisp, drizzled in syrup, but they stuck in Maddox's throat like regret. Conversation flowed around him, Riley planning a hike up to Rattlesnake Ledge, Harlan reminiscing about Oregon trails, the words washing over Maddox like rain on glass. He contributed nods, half smiles, but inside, turmoil churned. That kiss, stolen, seismic, had cracked open doors he'd bolted shut years ago, back in his Boise high school days when coming out meant losing the family he barely held onto after his parents split. After breakfast, Riley dragged them all out, the three of them piling into Harlan's rented truck, the cab smelling of leather and pine air freshener. The drive to the trailhead wound through evergreen tunnels, mist clinging to the windshield wipers. Maddox wedged between them in the front seat, Riley shotgun, Harlan driving, his thigh brushing Harlan's with every curve, a torture of proximity. Harlan's grip tightened on the wheel, knuckles white, and Maddox wondered if he felt it too, the current humming beneath the surface. The hike started easy, gravel crunching under boots, the air sharp with pine and damp earth. Riley led, bounding ahead like a puppy, while Maddox and Harlan fell into step behind, the silence between them thicker than the fog. Birds called overhead, a raven's croak echoing Maddox's unease. Finally, Harlan broke it, voice low. "We need to talk about last night." Maddox's stomach dropped, but he kept his eyes on the path, roots twisting like veins underfoot. "What's there to say? It was a mistake." "Was it?" Harlan's tone was edged, challenging, and he stopped, turning to face him on the narrow trail. Up close, in the dappled light, the lines on his face seemed deeper, etched by years Maddox could only imagine. A marriage crumbling, a son growing distant, nights alone in a cabin staring at stars that offered no answers. "Because it didn't feel like one to me." Maddox's breath caught, the admission pulling at him like gravity. "You're Riley's dad." "I'm nothing. This ends now." Harlan stepped closer, the heat of him cutting through the chill. "Nothing? Kid, you looked at me like I was the only thing real in that room." His hand ghosted Maddox's wrist, a touch so light it might have been wind, but it ignited him all the same. Riley's voice called from ahead. "Yo, you guys coming?" And they sprang apart, hearts racing. The summit offered no relief. They perched on rocks overlooking the valley, Seattle's skyline a hazy smudge in the distance, sandwiches unwrapped in companionable quiet. But Maddox felt Harlan's eyes on him, steady and searching, stirring a longing he'd buried under layers of caution. As they descended, Riley ahead again, Harlan leaned in during a steep switchback. "Meet me tonight. After he's out." The rooftop. Maddox should have said no. Every rational fiber screamed it. The betrayal to Riley, the chasm of their worlds, the wreckage waiting. But the word that slipped out was okay, soft as surrender. That evening, Riley headed to a frat party, slapping Maddox on the back. "Don't wait up, bro." The door clicked shut, and the apartment exhaled, tension uncoiling like a spring. Maddox paced, nerves frayed, until a soft knock came from the fire escape. Harlan, slipping in through the window like a secret. They didn't speak at first. Harlan crossed the room in 3 strides, pulling Maddox against him, the kiss deeper this time, unhurried, tongues tracing questions neither voiced. Maddox melted into it, hands fisting Harlan's shirt, the world fading to the press of bodies and shared breaths. They tumbled onto the couch, Harlan's weight grounding him, calloused hands mapping skin with reverence. It was more than lust, it was recognition, 2 souls adrift finding harbor in the storm. But as they lay tangled after, sweat cooling, reality seeped in. Harlan traced Maddox's jaw, voice rough. "I've been alone too long. After the divorce. I thought that was it. Straight lines, you know? But you." "Shoo." Maddox murmured, heart aching at the vulnerability in those eyes. He wanted to promise forever, but the lie tasted bitter. This was borrowed time, a weekend fever dream. Harlan left before Riley returned, a ghost in the night, but his absence echoed. Maddox lay awake, the rooftop promise fulfilled but hollow. Dawn brought coffee and avoidance, Harlan's goodbye hug lingering too long, his whisper, "Portland's not far. Text me," a thread to cling to. As the truck pulled away, Maddox stood on the curb, rain starting to fall, watching taillights vanish into the gray. The shock of that first intrusion had bloomed into something tender and terrifying, a love story scribbled in margins. But how long before the pages tore? Weeks blurred into a rhythm of stolen moments, each one a high-wire act over the abyss. Maddox's phone buzzed at odd hours, Harlan's texts, simple at first, "Thinking of you," evolving into confessions that peeled back layers. Stories of a youth spent hiding crushes on farm boys in rural Oregon, a marriage built on duty rather than desire, the divorce a liberation he'd never dared claim. Maddox reciprocated in fragments, his Boise upbringing in a house of silences, the first fumbling kiss with a theater kid at 16 that ended in tears and isolation. Seattle's drizzle became their backdrop, video calls in the dead of night when Riley slept, voices low and laced with longing. They met when they could. Harlan drove up twice that month, claiming business, crashing at a motel off I-5. The first time, Maddox slipped out under pretense of a study group, heart pounding as he navigated the neon-lit lot. Harlan opened the door shirtless, pulling him inside with a kiss that tasted of urgency and home. The room was nondescript, faded curtains, a bed that creaked under their weight. But in Harlan's arms, it felt sacred. They explored each other slowly, mapping scars and sighs. Harlan's hands steady where Maddox's trembled. "You're beautiful," Harlan breathed against his neck, words Maddox had never heard, let alone believed. But guilt gnawed at the edges. Riley noticed nothing at first, too buried in midterms, and a new fling with a barista named Lena. "Dad called, says hi." He'd say casually, and Maddox would nod, throat tight, the deception a stone in his gut. Lies piled up, late nights at the library, dodged questions about his mood. Maddox withdrew, burying himself in psych papers on relational dynamics, irony not lost on him. The third meetup shattered the fragile peace. Harlan booked a cabin an hour east, near Snoqualmie, whispering promises of a weekend away. Maddox fabricated a family emergency, his aunt in Boise, a white lie that twisted like a knife. Riley bought it, even offered to drive him to the airport, but Maddox waved him off, guilt fueling the drive instead. The cabin was rustic, wood smoke curling from the chimney, Lake Washington glittering under autumn sun. Harlan waited on the porch, flannel unbuttoned against the crisp air, his smile unarming Maddox's defenses. They hiked trails hand in hand, no eyes to hide from, sharing stories over thermoses of coffee. That night, by the fire, Harlan opened up fully, the fear of losing Riley if the truth spilled, the ache of half a life unlived. Maddox listened, head on Harlan's chest, the heartbeat steady as an anchor. "I love you," Harlan said into the flames, the words slipping out unplanned, hanging in the glow. Maddox's breath stilled, joy and terror colliding. Me too," he whispered, the admission a dam breaking. They made love then, tender and fierce, the cabin walls holding their secrets. But secrets have cracks. Monday brought reality crashing back. Riley cornered Maddox in the kitchen, eyes narrowed. "You seem off, man. Everything good with that aunt?" Maddox froze, fork midway to his mouth. "Yeah, just family stuff." The lie tasted foul, but Riley shrugged, letting it go. That night, though, Maddox's phone lit up. Not Harlan, but an unknown number. A photo, him and Harlan on the trail, hands linked, snapped from afar. Attached, "Tell Riley, or I will." A friend. Panic surged, cold and visceral. Who? A hiker? Someone from Harlan's past? Maddox's hands shook as he deleted it, blocking the number, but the threat lingered like smoke. He texted Harlan, "We need to stop. It's not safe." Harlan's reply was immediate. "What happened? Talk to me." The call that followed was a storm. Harlan's voice cracked with fear. "Who sent that?" "Christ, Maddox, I can't lose you." While Maddox paced the dark living room, Riley's snores a mocking underscore. "This was always going to end," Maddox said, voice breaking. "You're his dad. I'm the roommate who lied." "Don't," Harlan pleaded raw. "We fight for this. Together." But doubt rooted deep. The next days were torture. Maddox dodging Harlan's calls, burying the phone under textbooks, throwing himself into runs that left his lungs burning. Riley sensed the shift, inviting him to game nights, but Maddox's smiles were brittle. One evening, over beers on the balcony, Riley turned serious. "You know you can talk to me, right? Whatever's eating you." Maddox looked out at the city lights, twinkling like distant regrets. "It's just, love's complicated." The half-truth hung, and Riley clapped his shoulder. "Tell me about it." "Dad's divorce wrecked him. Says he's done with it all." The words landed like blows. Harlan done? Or hiding? Maddox's resolve cracked, and that night, he unblocked the number, staring at the photo until it blurred. The blackmailer was silent, but the damage festered. Halloween approached, Seattle's streets gearing up for revelry, but Maddox felt the noose tightening. Harlan showed up unannounced, knocking softly at midnight, face drawn under the porch light. "I drove all night. We can't end like this." Maddox let him in, the apartment empty, Riley at Lena's. They collapsed onto the bed, kisses desperate, bodies seeking solace in familiarity. But as Harlan held him after, whispering plans, a visit to Portland, coming out together, Maddox pulled away. "The photo. Someone knows." Harlan's face hardened. "We'll handle it. But hiding? That's killing us." Tears stung Maddox's eyes, the conflict tearing him apart. Love or loyalty? The choice loomed, a chasm widening. November's chill seeped into the bones of the city, leaves skittering across Capitol Hill sidewalks like fleeing thoughts. Maddox's world narrowed to a haze of lectures and lies. The blackmail photo, a specter haunting his every glance at Riley. He researched in frantic bursts. Reverse image searches yielding nothing. Anonymous tips to campus security dismissed as pranks. Harlan's texts piled up. Please, morphing to anger. You're shutting me out. Is this what love is? Maddox read them in the library bathroom, tears blurring the screen, before deleting, the act a small violence against the bond they'd forged. Riley, bless his oblivious heart, threw a pre-Thanksgiving bash, costume party in the apartment, strings of lights casting flickering shadows on pumpkin-carved faces. Maddox dressed as a zombie, makeup hiding the hollows under his eyes, but the mask felt two apartment guests spilled in, music thumping from speakers, the air thick with cheap punch and laughter. Harlan wasn't there, but his absence pulsed like a bruise. Midway through, Riley pulled Maddox aside, beer in hand, concern etching his brow. Dude, you've been a ghost. Spill, what's with the moping? Maddox's throat closed, the truth a tidal wave behind flimsy walls. Just stressed. Finals, you know? Riley nodded, but his eyes lingered, probing. Then, disaster. The door opened, and there was Harlan, uninvited, flannel swapped for a leather jacket, carrying a six-pack like an olive branch. Surprise visit, he announced, clapping Riley in a hug. Couldn't miss the fest. Riley hooped, oblivious, but Maddox's blood ran cold. Harlan's gaze found him across the room, loaded with apology and heat, and Maddox fled to the kitchen, heart hammering. Harlan followed minutes later, cornering him by the fridge. I had to see you. You can't be here, Maddox hissed, voice low over the bass. Not like this. Harlan's hand brushed his, hidden by the counter. I miss you. Every damn day. The words cracked Maddox's armor, and he leaned in, stealing a kiss, brief, burning, before pulling back, eyes wild. Party noise swelled, a buffer against the recklessness. But fate, cruel curator, intervened. As the night peaked, a drunk guest, Mikey, Riley's buddy from Chem Lab, stumbled into the kitchen, phone in hand. Whoa, bromance alert, he slurred, snapping a photo before Maddox could react. Harlan tensed, but Mikey laughed it off, pocketing the device. Chill, it's just for the group chat. The image hit the chat an hour later. Harlan and Maddox, close, intimate in the flash's glare. Riley saw it first, face paling as he shoved his phone at Maddox. What the hell is this? The room spun, voices fading to a roar in Maddox's ears. It's nothing. Bullshit, Riley snapped, eyes flicking between them. Harlan stepped forward, face ashen. Son, let me. You? Riley's voice rose, drawing stares. Dad? With Maddox? Are you fucking kidding me? The party deflated, guests murmuring, slipping out like smoke. Riley stormed to his room, door slamming, leaving Maddox and Harlan in wreckage. Harlan reached for him, but Maddox recoiled. This is it. The end. No, Harlan growled, pulling him close despite the resistance. We face it. Together. But Maddox wrenched free, tears hot. You don't get it. I betrayed him. We did. He fled to his room, locking the door, sobs racking him as Riley's muffled shouts echoed. How long? How could you? Harlan's knocks followed, please turning to silence. Morning brought fallout. Riley emerged red-eyed, packing a bag. I'm crashing at Lena's. Don't call. He glared at Harlan, who sat stone-faced at the table. And you, stay the hell away. Harlan left without protest, truck rumbling into the rain. Maddox collapsed alone, the apartment a tomb of echoes. Days bled into isolation, skipped classes, uneaten takeout, the blackmail forgotten in the fresh wound. His phone stayed dark, Harlan's silence a deeper cut. A week later, the coward's note arrived, not digital, but slipped under the door, a printed photo from the cabin, with a demand. $5,000, or Riley gets the rest. Maddox's hands shook as he burned it in the sink, flames licking paper, but fear-rooted. Who was the shadow? Harlan's ex? A jealous ex-employee? He drove to Portland unannounced, the I-5 a blur of taillights. Harlan's cabin stood dark, but light flickered inside. Knocking, Maddox braced for rejection. Harlan opened, unshaven, eyes hollow. Maddox. The dam broke. Maddox spilled it all, the threat, the party, Riley's rage. Harlan pulled him in, holding tight as sobs shook them both. I lost him, Maddox whispered. Because of us. Harlan cupped his face, thumbs brushing tears. We'll fix it. But first, we end this. They traced leads together, Harlan's contacts, old grudges from the divorce. It led to Victor, Harlan's former partner in the firm, bitter over a buyout, who'd tailed him to Seattle. Confronted, Victor crumbled, The money refused, threats empty bluster. Relief washed, but the real storm brewed back home. Riley returned eventually, mediated by a tense coffee shop sit-down. Words flew. Hurt, betrayal, please. I love him, son, Harlan admitted, voice steady. Not like that with you. Ever. Riley's face crumpled. He's my best friend. And you, my dad. Forgiveness didn't come easy, but seeds planted, time, therapy, boundaries. For Maddox, the crisis peaked in a breakdown on the lakeshore, Harlan's arms his lifeline. I thought I'd lose you both, he gasped. You won't, Harlan vowed. We're in this. Healing began, tentative, but the scar of betrayal lingered, a reminder of love's cost. Winter gripped Seattle like a vice, holiday lights twinkling against the relentless dark, a mockery of cheer in Maddox's fractured world. The apartment felt cavernous without Riley's easy chaos. He came and went, nods polite but eyes guarded, the rift a chasm bridged by awkward silences. Maddox threw himself into finals, caffeine-fueled all-nighters blurring essays on resilience. The irony, a bitter pill. Harlan's visits were curtailed, weekend drives to neutral ground, a diner in Tacoma where booths hid their clasped hands under tables. The blackmail's defeat brought no peace. Victor's confession unearthed Harlan's deeper shadows. Over mulled wine by the cabin fire one December night, Harlan unburdened. I knew, deep down, about guys. But after your mom left, Riley was all I had. Couldn't risk it. His voice cracked, fingers tracing Maddox's knuckles. You made me brave. Maddox leaned into him, the warmth a balm. And you made me seen. But doubt whispered, was this love or desperation? Harlan's world was Portland's quiet rhythms. Maddox's, Seattle's electric pulse. Age gaps yawned, futures misaligned. Christmas Eve tested them. Riley invited Maddox home. His mom's in Bellevue, a tentative olive branch. Harlan was there too, the family dinner a minefield of forced joviality. Turkey carved with precision, stories swapped over pie, but undercurrents pulled. After, in the guest room, Harlan slipped in, their lovemaking hushed and urgent, bodies muffling gasps against pillows. Marry me, Harlan murmured in the afterglow, half jest, half prayer. Maddox laughed, tears pricking. Crazy old man. But the words lodged, a dream deferred. New Year's brought escalation. A party at Lena's loft, Riley thawing enough to drag Maddox along. The countdown loomed, confetti poised, when Harlan appeared. Invited by Riley, a test disguised as reconciliation. Tension crackled. Riley watched them like a hawk, but as Auld Lang's sign swelled, Harlan pulled Maddox onto the balcony, city fireworks blooming overhead. I meant it, Harlan said, breath fogging the rail. Build something. With me. Maddox's heart soared, then plummeted. Riley's just starting to forgive. And me, graduation's in May. What then? Harlan's jaw set. We wait. But not forever. The kiss sealed it, fireworks mirroring the burst inside. But back inside, Riley cornered them, eyes sharp. If you're serious, prove it. No more secrets. The gauntlet thrown, they committed. Open with Riley, slow steps toward family. Sessions with a counselor followed. Riley venting fury, Harlan owning his deceptions, Maddox confessing the guilt that nearly drowned him. Bonds mended, fragile but real. Spring thawed the ice, cherry blossoms dusting the UW quad. Maddox's thesis on queer identity in modern America poured out his soul, pages laced with their story anonymized. Harlan visited more, helping pack for post-grad job hunts, a psych aid gig in Portland, a compromise. But conflict crested in April, a storm from Harlan's past. His ex, Carla, rolled into town, custody whispers turning venomous. You're deluded, she spat over a contentious lunch, Riley caught in crossfire. Turning our son into collateral for your midlife crisis. Harlan's face drained, but he stood firm. This is me, Carla. Finally, Maddox, witnessing from afar, felt the slash. Was he the crisis? That night, doubt erupted. Am I ruining you? Maddox demanded in the truck, rain lashing. Harlan pulled over, gripping the wheel. You're saving me. But if it's too much. No, Maddox cut in, fierce. Fight. They did. Carla backed off, Riley choosing sides with quiet support. The crisis forged steel in them, love tempered by fire. Graduation dawned sunny, cap and gown heavy with promise. Harlan in the crowd, eyes proud, Riley hugging tight. Proud of you, man. Diplomas in hand, Maddox stepped into the unknown. Harlan's ring, simple silver, slipped onto his finger in private vow. Yet shadows lingered, the betrayals echo a cautionary hum. Summer unfurled in Portland's green embrace. Maddox's new life a tapestry of firsts. Apartment hunts in the Pearl District, job orientations at a community clinic where he'd counsel lost souls like his former self. Harlan's cabin became home base, its creaks familiar now, mornings spent with coffee on the deck, watching the Willamette flow lazy and wide. Riley visited weekends, the three of them grilling salmon, stories bridging gaps, laughter tentative, then free. Love deepened in quiet rhythms. Harlan taught Maddox to swing a hammer, building bookshelves that held psych tomes beside carpentry manuals. Maddox coaxed Harlan into therapy, unpacking closets long shuttered. Nights were theirs, bodies entwined under quilts, whispers tracing futures, adoptions maybe, travels to coasts uncharted. "You're my horizon," Harlan said once. Fingers in Maddox's hair, the words of vow etched in skin. But betrayal's ghost resurfaced in July, a letter from Victor, not threat, but apology, laced with poison, tales of Harlan's flings post-divorce, whispers of patterns Maddox ignored. Doubt crept, insidious. Was this just another chapter in Harlan's reinvention? Confrontation brewed over a road trip to the Oregon coast, Cannon Beach's haystacks looming like sentinels. In the motel, salt air thick, Maddox laid it bare. "Did you? Before me? With others?" Harlan's face fell, truth ablaid. "Once. A guy in a bar, right after Carla left. Regretted it instant, drunk mistake." He reached, but Maddox recoiled. "And you didn't tell me?" "Thought it buried. Like my shame." Harlan's voice broke. "I was scared you'd run." The wound festered, Maddox fleeing to the beach alone, waves crashing fury. Hours later, Harlan found him, sand-dusted, eyes red. "I can't be your experiment." "You're not." Harlan knelt, desperate. "You're everything." They talked till dawn, raw, unfiltered. Harlan vowing transparency, Maddox admitting his fear of being the rebound. Healing was jagged, space taken, calls sparse. Riley mediating with reluctant wisdom. Dad's flawed man. Like us all. Maddox returned, forgiveness hard-won, but the crisis clarified. Love wasn't perfection, but persistence. Fall brought stability, Maddox's caseload growing, stories of coming-outs mirroring his arc. Harlan proposed formally on a rainy hike, knee in mud, ring glinting. "Marry me. For real." Tears mixed with rain. "Yes." Wedding plans wove through chaos, small, in the woods, Riley best man. But climax hit in November. Carla's lawsuit, alleging Harlan's lifestyle, unfit for Riley's visits. Courtroom sterile, testimonies slicing. Harlan's past dredged, Maddox on stand, voice steady. Love doesn't unfit anyone. It heals. Judge ruled fair, shared custody, boundaries. Victory bittersweet, family fractures mending slow. Through it, Maddox's crisis peaked in solitude, journaling doubts. "Am I enough?" Harlan's response, a letter slipped under door. "You're my enough." The storm passed, leaving growth, deeper trust, fiercer bond. Winter's hush settled over Portland, snow dusting the evergreens like forgiveness deferred. The wedding came in December, a simple affair in a forest clearing. Vows exchanged under mistletoe boughs, Riley's toast choked with pride. To second chances. Maddox in a tailored wool suit, Harlan in his best flannel, rings exchanged with hands that trembled not from cold, but awe. Guests few, clinic colleagues, Harlan's crew, Lena beaming. But the air hummed with possibility, Seattle a memory softened by distance. Honeymoon was a cabin in the Cascades, isolation amplifying intimacy. Snowbound, they shed layers literal and not. Harlan confessing boyhood crushes on baseball stars, Maddox revealing Boise bullies who sharpened his silence. Laughter mingled with tears, bodies and souls aligning in fireside glow. "We're whole," Maddox whispered one night, Harlan's heartbeat his lullaby. Back home, life wove intricate. Mornings of shared commutes, evenings cooking chili while debating politics. Harlan's conservative roots clashing Maddox's progressive fire, sparks forging understanding. Riley thrived at grad school in Corvallis, visits laced with inside jokes, the betrayal a scar faded to lesson. But the arc's crescendo crested in spring, a health scare. Harlan's chest pains during a build site rush, ER lights harsh. Maddox waited alone, corridors echoing fears. Not yet. Not when we're just beginning. Tests clear, stress, angina warning. But the brush with fragility cracked them open. Harlan, recovering, gripped Maddox's hand. Life's short. No more half measures. The crisis birthed resolve. Harlan semi-retiring. Clinic expansion for Maddox. Plans for fostering. Kids like they once were, adrift. Betrayal's echo? Transformed to empathy. Understanding Riley's lingering wariness. Carla's barbs now met with grace. Summer solstice marked a year since the doors swung open. That shocking intrusion, now origin myth. They returned to Seattle, apartment sublet, but memories thick. Riley joined for a hike, the three atop Rattlesnake, views vast. Thanks, Riley said, clapping shoulders. For sticking. Sunset painted them gold, Maddox's hand in Harlan's, the pull unbreakable. Love, they'd learned, was no fairy tale, riddled with stumbles, stitched with will. It humanized, elevated, turned strangers to anchors. Years blurred. Foster's becoming family. Clinic a haven. Harlan's firm community hub. Maddox, gray threading his hair by 40, reflected in mirrors not haunted, but home. The shock of that morning? A gift, disguised, proof that vulnerability births miracles. In quiet nights, Harlan's arm around him, Maddox knew. They'd shocked not just each other, but the world into wider grace. Love, messy and profound, healed all.